We'll call this special council meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof? Seeing none, moved on. There was no closed session, no matters from closed session. Delegations and presentations. And I'll call on Director Coleman to speak about the Blackstock Recreation Complex update and investing in Canada infrastructure. Director Coleman.
As you mentioned, I'm here today to give you an update on where we're at with the Blackstock Recreation Complex and requesting Council to approve a bylaw to show support and authorization to submit a grant application. So the Blackstock recreation expansion, the replacement of the arena and other facilities fall under a strategic plan in a number of areas. Under strategic direction number 1, roads and municipal infrastructure. In fact, there's a very specific point here under that direction that says complete a preliminary design and consultation to decommission the existing ice pad and construct a new arena in Blackstock. It also falls under economic development and tourism, municipal services, and complete community. As a brief background, in 2018, we updated the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Strategic Master Plan, and it identified the highest priority as a replacement of the arena and Blackstock Recreation Complex. If we do not replace it, the arena requires $4.65 million in repair to maintain it as it is now as an undersized, older arena, and the arena is 80 years old. So we either have the choice right now to replace it, make the investment in the arena, or if we do nothing, then the arena will close in the near future. There has been numerous council resolutions supporting this direction. When we brought the draft master plan forward in April 2018, we also brought these 5 recommendations forward. The first recommendation was that the master plan be approved, and council did approve it in April 30th, 2018. The next recommendation was that a design for a new arena in Blackstock be included in the 2019 capital budget, if possible, and it was included in the 2019 capital budget, and this council approved that on March 4th of this year. Another recommendation was that the establishment of a reserve for construction of a new arena in Blackstock be considered through the proposed reserve fund strategy. And that reserve fund strategy was brought forward to this council in December 2018, and it was approved. Then the fourth recommendation was that the township's 2018-2019 development charge study include an updated cost for the arena, and which may increase the availability of funds for the arena. And that new DC study was brought forward and approved by council in May of 2019, and the estimated cost for the arena at that time was $22,700,000. And the fifth recommendation was that the township pursue grant funding for the proposed new arena in Blackstock from other levels of government. And we're very fortunate right now. On September 3rd, a new grant opportunity was announced, and that is what we're seeking endorsement for right now. So that grant is known as the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, or ICIP, and it's the community, culture, and recreation component of that. And that was announced September 3rd. It's intended for publicly accessible, multi-purpose spaces that bring together a variety of different services, programs, and or social and cultural activities to reflect local community needs. The total amount of funding available in Ontario for this is $727 million, provide both federal and provincial funding. It's a very good component they're covering. The grant can cover up to 73.33%, which is very significant. And the $727 million is not very much when you divide it between all the Ontario municipalities, so it will be a very competitive grant program. The deadline for submission is November 12th, next week, and all work must be completed by March 31st, 2027. So as I mentioned, we had this project in our capital budget for 2019. We were planning to come up with a preliminary design and cost estimates in early in 2020, the first quarter. since the funding announcement came right after we did the contract award for the design, we knew we had a much tighter deadline to beat the November 12th deadline. So everything has been compressed for this. But in the last 2 months, we have done quite a bit of work towards the application. We've done a significant consultation so far. We've met with the Blackstock Agricultural Society, who run the fair in Blackstock. We've met with a Blackstock Advisory Committee on 2 occasions so far. We met with the chair of the Scugog Accessibility Advisory Committee. We had an ice makers workshop with staff from our consultant, Barry Bryan Associates, BBA, the arena attendants, Simcoe Refrigeration, and Nor Architects. A public forum was held on October 3rd, 2019, and we had over 90 people in attendance, which is a very large turnout for this municipality. And we had groups there, user groups, potential future user groups, residents, community leaders. We also had a meeting with Chief Laraka of Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, and we're meeting tomorrow with their grants committee to talk about their support. The chief has supported this project. She would really like to see programs for First Nations people as part of this project, and she will be providing a letter of support for the grant that we are submitting, or that we are asking to submit. Overall, I would say that we've had overwhelming support from everybody we've talked to. With the public meeting especially, people were very excited about this opportunity for the township. We're pretty early in the design phase, but we have the elements that we think should be on the site together, and this is what we're proposing for the grant application. To retain the community hall and the kitchen and the meeting rooms that are there now. Add a new modern arena, a single pad with NHL size ice with 200 to 300 seats. And it won't just be used for winter ice sports. It'll also be a floor space that can be used in the summer for a wide variety of activities as well. We're looking at a double gymnasium, which would be about 8,000 square feet. A multi-purpose space that could be dividable into 3 rooms, about 2,500 square feet. An indoor walking and running track, something that's not available in Scugog right now. We would be reconfiguring the fairground, providing other outdoor amenities, and reserving a space on the property for a future branch for the library, but that would not be part of this phase of construction. And we also need to relocate the septic system to support the new building. Benefits of this project, by replacing an aging facility with a modern facility, we'll have improved accommodation for Indigenous, senior, adult, youth, child programming for all of the township, located at the Blackstock Recreation Complex. It's not just ice sports, there'll be a variety of culture, recreation, fitness, wellness, social, educational programming. It will also bring economic stimulus to Scugog in general, but to the Blackstock area in specific. It'll enhance the appeal of Blackstock community and attract more customers from across the township and beyond. Also, the facilities there now are far from accessible, and then we would be able to provide full access for all abilities at that new facility and improved energy efficiency. As you might guess, an 80-year-old building is not energy efficient. So talking about funding, we looked at 2 options for this. The first is what you see in the capital budget, and it relies on a debenture. It's not exactly as it is in the capital budget because our deadline for that was 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we made some small adjustments since then. But if we were successful in receiving the grant, that would cover almost $17 million worth of the project costs. We also have development charges available that are designated for this project. We've been putting money aside in our major facilities reserve, and we also look to see a fundraising donation component for this project as well. With a project cost of $23 million, that would leave just under $3 million of a debenture required for this option. A second option we looked at, everything is the same except for the debenture. Instead of going out and borrowing from others, we could borrow against the development charges that are yet to be paid to us for this project. So according to the development charge study, there's about $5.9 million in DC charges would be towards this project, but that will be collected over a 10-year period. So we do have some development charges in other categories that aren't fully spent at this point. So we could borrow against those money, which would be a lot cheaper for the township to do. In that case, we wouldn't need a debenture, and we'd be able to do the project without the debenture. So that would save us significant amounts of cost. So just in conclusion, Council has consistently supported the role of Blackstock Recreation Complex as one of 2 culture and recreation hubs serving the township. In fact, Regional Councillor Watton was able to dig up a 1997 Park and Rec Master Plan that references the 1987 one that said that there should be 2, and it's referenced in here as well. And the 2007 Recreation Plan also talks about having 2 hubs in the community, one being in Blackstock and one being in Port Perry. And as I said earlier, if the arena is not replaced or if major investment is not made, the arena will close soon. This is a great opportunity. Getting this grant at 73% is something we won't see very often, and we should definitely take advantage of this. The new facility would be much more than just an arena. It will provide space for a wide variety of recreational, culture, and community programs and events. And so we're seeking full council support for this. As part of the grant application, it's highly recommended to improve our chance of success that all of council supports this application. So as the report said, we are recommending that our report be received and that the bylaw that's appended to authorize and support the submission of a grant application under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture and Recreation 2019 intake for the Blackstock Recreation Complex Arena replacement and facility expansion be approved and adopted. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions on the presentation? Seeing none, may I have a motion that oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question with the options that you presented. Does the funding options, either option 1 or 2, does that change the grant funding or the application itself? Does a decision need to be made on which strategy is best to proceed?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, it doesn't change our grant application, except that one part of it, the grant application does talk about showing that we can fund our side of it. So if we have a good strategy in place that shows that we can come up with the funds, that will help our grant application. But in general, I mean, we can submit it without knowing which option we're doing. We can finalize this part once we know whether we receive the grant or not.
Okay.
Further?
Further, with the current proposal having an arena plus a number of other the proposed elements that you've mentioned before, the running track and everything else, the removal of any of those, given that we don't have a final plan in front of us, the removal, whether it's the arena or a track or anything, how does that impact the actual funding strategy going ahead? Has that been all costed out, itemized, or is it much more melded at this point?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, the cost estimates at this point are fairly high level. They're good because we know the square feet and the general elements of it, so they're reasonable. But if council thought that this was too rich or something and wanted to cut back on elements, that could happen as well at any time. Especially like the gym component is a block in itself. It could be removed if council chose to.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so when would that take place? If we approve it today to go ahead with the funding, and then later on looking at the business plan, so to speak, of what actually the plan is, and it's seen to be too rich for our blood, or there's too much, because the proposed elements, that's everything you want in an area. Whether we can afford it or not is another question, but how does that affect the grant money coming out? Is it still that 73.33% of whatever the final is, and that's the grant that will be given to us?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Coleman. I do have a few questions regarding this. The $4.65 million option to repair the existing facility, would that option qualify for the grant submission, or is it only a brand new build would qualify for the grant submission?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, there's 2 streams to this grant, and one of them is for retrofits, so under $5 million. That would qualify. But I don't recommend investing that much in a building that is so old, and it's much smaller than a regulation size rink is now. That covers a new refrigeration system, a new roof, those types of things, but the actual building would not change after those investments were made.
Okay, and further, if I may, you mentioned the regulation size, so I know that Scugog and Uxbridge, or Port Perry and Uxbridge, aren't the NHL size that you have proposed here. But has Blackstock Minor Hockey or any other user group expressed the desire to have a larger than what they have now ice surface?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the feedback I have heard that there is a desire to have a full-size ice rink there for sure.
From the existing user groups?
Yes.
The reason I ask is I know that North Durham Hockey didn't participate in the user group meeting, or the meeting that we had, the 90 approximate people. I asked them why they didn't attend, and their answer was that they have no desire to use that facility in the future. They've seen a 10% decline in ice hockey enrollment, equating to, I think it was 11.5 hours reduction in weekly ice time at Uxbridge and 6 hours in Port Perry. So their desire wouldn't be to expand their borders even further to the Blackstock Arena. So I was just wondering if the existing users had said that they would need to have the larger ice surface.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, through the Parks and Rec Master Plan, we did look at ice available in the entire region, and there's other ones that may be closing, such as in Kawartha
Manvers.
Lakes. So that study did support that we need that third ice pad and that it would be utilized.
But outside of our borders, it would be utilized by people not within our township then?
It would be utilized by both, by our township, and then there would be some people outside as well.
So we would potentially be building this for users outside of our
For
municipality.
some of the users maybe, any facility built could be users outside. But I
Right.
believe the majority would be Scugog residents.
That are currently using Manvers Arena?
I don't have the breakdown of
Oh,
which.
okay, all right, sorry, I thought that's what you had indicated. The fundraising, the $1 million, what happens if we don't reach that fundraising target? Where does the $1 million come from?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, that was just a number that we have talked about among staff. We can use more development charges if that is not raised.
Okay, so what other projects may not proceed then if we were to use the $1 million that was not received in fundraising from development charges? Are there other projects then that would have to be shelved or not proceed?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, right now, we don't see any other projects that would not go ahead. Some of the other development charges we're saving up for some bigger items, so we do have some money there that can be used in the interim for this project. I don't see other projects not going forward because of this.
Okay, that's good. And then further, if I may, the facility and the services that will be available should this grant be successful would be fabulous. It has nothing to do with that. I just question per se the location. If our public transit system does not currently service, I don't believe, that area, we're having many facilities that would be beneficial at the whole, but we don't have any way to send some of our residents to this facility. So has there been talks with Durham Transit that if our facility does get improved, that we will be able to get our residents there?
I can answer that question. The transit department at the region is looking, as we speak, at improving the transit options for all of North Durham. And there's a number of options that they are looking at, and they're looking for public feedback on that. And certainly, when that public feedback comes forward and our opportunities as regional councillors, we can highlight this particular site that, that's also something that needs to be considered in the mix.
That would be great, because I know in Port Perry facility, it's within walking distance of a very large populace of people. I'm not sure if that would be the same for the Blackstock facility. While there are many people that live in Blackstock, I worry that we'll be building a great facility and maybe our youth can't necessarily get there as easily. My last question, sorry, two last questions. Are we able to submit this grant without knowing our true operating plan and how we plan to fund the operating side of having staff and the additional expenses?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we're working on an operating plan right now that will be submitted with the grant application. Unfortunately, it's not to a stage that I could share it today, but we will have something that we will submit with the grant application.
But as council, we won't be able to understand what that operating plan is prior to us providing our approval to the grant?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the council, that's correct. As I said, it's a very compressed schedule, and I was working on it on the weekend.
And I appreciate that. I am very uncomfortable supporting something if I don't know if in the future we're able to support the actual day-to-day operation of this facility without knowing the staff complement and just the general operating costs. It's difficult for myself to support this.
Through your Madam Mayor, to the councillor, well, before we go into the design, like when we have a preliminary design, we will be coming back to council with that design. We can also bring the operating impacts at that time, and we can show you the whole picture. We can show you what it's going to look like on the site, and we'll have a lot more information, and that will be probably in January.
But is that too late for us to put our hand up and say we can't afford this?
We can make modifications to it at that time to make it more affordable if you thought it was not affordable.
Thank you. And my last question, what does full council support mean? That every single member of council, in order for this to be viewed properly, needs to support this? Is that what that means?
No, I believe it just means the majority of council would,
Oh.
same as any other vote. Is that,
I think Director Coleman had said full council support.
what did you mean by that?
I would prefer that all council supports it, but it's not necessary.
Okay, all right, no, I'm sorry, I thought I heard that it said full council support would be favorable. But
Mr. Cielo?
If I might, Madam Mayor, I would hope that we would have full council support. This grant application, as Director Coleman has mentioned, is very competitive. And we'll be competing with many other municipalities for this slim amount of money. It needs to go through actually the provincial MPP office and then through the federal component of that, which would be our MP or beyond. And, you know, I think showing that the community is fully behind this and council's fully behind this will help our efforts to get these funds. I am hoping that that's the case. To date, I think Director Coleman's laid out all the approvals that council have given to get us to this point. So I would think that that would be a given, but if not, then I guess that'll be expressed today.
Anything further?
no, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just in closing, that it's difficult, as I stated before, to support something if we don't know how we can support it in an operating perspective. That was my point.
Yeah, comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I understand that, but I guess what I'd add to that is that applying for the grant and fully supporting it, as Director Coleman said, there could be adjustments to the application or program if you're not satisfied with or comfortable with supporting it. But we've been working on this on very tight timelines, and it is feasible financially. I can tell you that, and there are components of the project that can be removed later, and of course then the grant is adjusted accordingly if council decided that, for instance, you felt that a gymnasium put the operating cost too high. Like for instance, the gymnasium component is about $4 million. You could remove that and not have a gymnasium at this time. I wouldn't recommend that because 73% funding is almost $3 million of the $4 million cost. But if you felt the operating costs of that were something you couldn't get behind or we couldn't get behind, we could take that off. you could take the multi-purpose rooms off and not have those available. The arena will be the arena, and we service an arena now, so those costs are there. In fact, the maintenance costs are much higher than they'll be on this new building. So I'm hoping that that will give you enough comfort to move forward.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I would just like to touch on that point then, Mr. CAO. Currently, correct me if I'm wrong, what is our full-time complement of staff at the Blackstock Arena then that's managing that facility?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I believe we have 2 seasonal operators at the Blackstock Arena and some students.
So that certainly wouldn't be what this building would only need. It would certainly need a far greater staff complement than 2 seasonal operators and a student.
That's true, but the revenues would also be significantly higher than they are right now.
Okay. Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of things. Further to Councillor Guido's comments about supporting people from outside of the township, I did go to Uxbridge to watch my son play hockey yesterday as part of the I think it's the North Durham Hockey League or whatever. So yes, I believe that other people come from outside of the townships to support various facilities. But just also I have like the Sunday morning men's league, the Wednesday night men's league, the Broomball Association. Those are just some that aren't, that are looking forward to a larger arena. They are prepared to give us letters of support. We have received one today from a resident that also speaks to, you know, supporting the going forward of the facility, respecting, you know, that the operating plan perhaps isn't finalized, but I believe it changes just as it changes for all our facilities based on usage, et cetera, et cetera. And I will just point out also that, you know, as that facility has been part of the hamlet of Blackstock and the surrounding community since 1937, and it received its artificial ice in 1977. Very little has been done to upgrade it or, you know, improve it other than to just keep it functional. But that does not mean it has not been part of the backbone of that community. And I think it is vitally important that we recognize the importance of it to all of the community, at least over there. And I'm not suggesting you have to build it because of that, but also not only for that, but because it has also been identified in the last 2-3 master plans as an expansion that, you know, that eastern part of the township should also have an arena or a recreational node. So those are things that we also should keep in mind, and I think that I struggle with when do we stop paying consultants if we're not going to listen to them, or stop hiring consultants if we're not going to listen to them. And 3 or 4 master plans later, I would hope that we would be able to move this forward. I do have an email from a resident, just again offering support and willing to, you know, be part of the fundraising committee. So this, not to underestimate what is moving out there. Rumors have it that the community was not behind it. I would certainly suggest that that is a falsehood and that much of the community is for it. Thank you.
Councillor Kiesebrink, then Councillor Brown.
This is a Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a really exciting opportunity. In 1913, the Blackstock Armories were built by the federal government and then donated to as a recreation center in 1971. In 2014, the hall portion was updated with federal and provincial funds support. So we had that support to make improvements. A fully equipped kitchen was built. It seats 200 in the hall. It's handicap accessible now, air conditioning. At that time, there's precedent for participation for government funding. The Honorable Erin O'Toole had commented that the grand reopening of Blackstock Community Center is a lovely building, and it continues to serve as a focal point for the community. We have so much going on in this place. It's not just for Blackstock. It's not just for the Ward 4. It's for all of us. It is a township facility, and I appreciate the thought processes that are going into transit and getting people there. Those are really, really valuable and valid points and really important, and we do need to work on that. But things like the Blackstock Lions Club hosting a Halloween dance in support of Oak Ridge Hospice, or the United Church Strawberry Supper, the Truck and Tractor Pool, which brings visitors and tourists from all around to our community, the Blackstock Fair, Kawartha Conservation holding a free water well workshop there, the Greenbelt Association hosting agricultural meetings there. We have celebrations of life, we have weddings, the playground, and for heaven's sake, our cenotaph. Like, the history that this building represents to our entire community. This is a legacy building. This is important. I've received quite a few letters from constituents. One says, I do support it. We can only hope to receive the grant. It makes sense to go forward with the new facility, as the township portion of the grant cost would be less than the repairs. It's a no-brainer. There's a need to look to the future for our kids, our grandkids, and for ourselves, because we have a lot of seniors that do need facilities. We need indoor walking track. We need the gymnasium for programs. Right now, the church is being used to do like yoga classes and things, but the facilities are not, accessible. And so these are some things that another constituent wrote. What a great opportunity to continue to have this great facility in and around the fairgrounds. We could surely use another arena in the area. I would be surprised that it wouldn't continue to be self-sufficient, as the ice availability from Orono to Uxbridge is hard to find. A full-size arena would be great. Another one says, great news for the community. Another person says, both my girls skated there. I'm familiar with the curling and other rentals. I do believe the nursery school, there's a Blackstock Co-op nursery school that uses the facility. They need better facilities as well. I don't think there's anyone in the community that doesn't want fiscal responsibility. I'm very pleased that there's an option 2 that's been presented today that our director has presented to us, showing that we don't have to do a debenture, that we can in fact use development charges that will be collected over the duration of the grant. The grant, I believe, ends to our CEOs, is it 2027? So it has to be built by that time. So during that time period, the development charges that are collected are collected for this type of purpose. So it would be fiscally responsible for us. By the same token, I absolutely agree with my fellow councillors that we do need to continue to monitor. If we have the privilege of getting this grant, we should be monitoring what we're doing. We don't want this project to go over. I did also receive an email about that. We want to make sure that we keep track of the funds, and if necessary, maybe we don't want to, but maybe we do have a plan A and a plan B with the Barry Bryant's design, so that in fact, if we have to, if it looks like it's going to run over, we can pull a piece out so that we don't end up getting ourselves into any hot water. I don't think there's anyone in this room that wants that. We all want to see this, to see fiscal responsibility. So I'll just speak for myself and for the constituents that I heard from, which were overwhelmingly in support, that we do want to see this legacy building preserved for our whole community. And if there are any that don't feel that it's a part of them, we'd like to be inclusive and help everyone to feel a part of that. I'm delighted that the First Nations are looking at opportunities of how they can participate with us and use this facility to greater extend the knowledge and awareness of all of the culture components. And I know that that's a key part of getting the financing as well, is that we need to stipulate and show that it is a community and that there are cultural elements to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giesbrink. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to go over a couple of figures if I can. Director Coleman, first of all, thank you for your diligence as always. We've invested $150,000 in this already, is that right, more or less?
That's correct.
Okay, we are gonna lose $4.6 million in essence if we let it go for 4 years and it runs out of Freon, and it's essentially useless after that, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, not just Freon, the roof needs to be replaced and some other significant structural repairs. But
Okay.
yes.
And there is some indication of, and Councillor Guido referenced it, some indication of a public survey that was held. I have down here 362 responses. There were also 2 open houses, user group survey from 22 groups. All that,
I
cor-
believe you're
more or less.
referring to the master plan that was done in 2018.
Okay, did that have anything to do with the Blackstock Arena then? What I'm getting at, I guess, is what kind of public response have we had on this?
In 2017, 2018, when we did the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Strategic Master Plan, there's a lot of public consultation that was done. There was a survey that was done. There was, I believe, 2 public meetings, and we met with all the user groups at that time. And the conclusion of that study was that our highest priority was the replacement of the arena in Blackstock.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for point of clarification, the questions right now are on the presentation, is that correct?
I beg your pardon?
The questions right now are on the presentation,
On the
is that?
presentation, yes.
So not on the report?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So just on the presentation, I guess at the top of the presentation, I think council approved something in the spring. I'm just wondering exactly what that was.
I think, are you looking at page 3 of 9?
Well, I can't see the presentation.
Okay.
It's on the screen here, but
Okay.
I can't scroll up. I believe it was for a preliminary design. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. So 2 things have been approved already in 2019. On March 4th, when the capital budget was approved for 2019, the design for the new arena was included as part of that capital budget. And in May of 2019, the development charge study came forward, and it included the construction of a new arena in 2024 at the cost of almost $23 million. And that was approved by council as well.
And so do we have any of that preliminary design to look at in terms of what we're improving?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we've had a couple of draft plans. We're still being worked on. Again, they weren't to a point that we could share. I just listed the elements of it, and that's what I conclude in this presentation, what the design includes.
So further through you, Madam Mayor, so we're not much further in terms of the preliminary design than we were when we approved it?
We have gotten further. We've identified what elements we want to include in the design. We've identified that we need to do a new septic system. We've done a fair amount of consultation over the last 2 months as well to get input from the public, so I feel like we have made some good progress.
And when does, further through you, Madam Mayor, when does this design need to be done for?
So there will be some supporting documents that will be submitted with the application, but the actual design itself doesn't need to be done for the application. We'll have that done early in 2020 to show to council for input before we finalize it.
So the application is just a list of elements in essence?
Right, yeah, so we don't need to have a detail or a preliminary design to go with it.
Okay, further through you, Madam Mayor. The operating cost of Blackstock Arena in 2019, actually, I think it might have been 2019 was $148,000 roughly. Will this new facility operate in that same area? I mean, I think as well, you maybe can comment, the user fees were about $111,000. I know being at the Blackstock Arena presentation, the cost of ice time was a major consideration for them. Will it operate at the same levels?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, the operating costs will definitely go up. There will be additional staff, as already noted. There will be additional, right now, it's mostly an arena that's run in the winter, and there's only a minor amount of floor spaces used in the summer, other than the community hall. So there will be additional operating costs, but there will also be a significantly increase in revenue coming in. The rate for the arena will go up to match the Scugog Community Recreation Center ice rates, because right now it's a lower rate because it's a smaller ice pad. So we expect a lot more usage, and it will be a higher rate as well.
So we're, further through, Madam Mayor, so we're looking at increasing the rate and increasing the usage as well.
Right.
Further, by whom?
The master plan identifies that there is a demand out there for it, and we do, and our consultants that we have on board now feel that way as well when they reviewed the usage rates in the area.
As part of the submission for November the 12th, are we required to submit a business plan for this?
As part of this mission, we're not required to, but we're putting together, our consultants putting together a needs study for it to support why the facility is needed.
Very good, that's all at this time, thank you.
Councillor Ross, before we go through second round of speakers, I'd just like to make one comment in particular. The option 2 for the funding, we've done this before. That is using future development charges. That was done in exactly the same type of situation as what we're facing now. We had an opportunity to do phase 1 of the waterfront. There was an identified need to increase the floor space and do renovations at the library, and we did that very same thing. It's now paid off, only just recently, last year or the year before, but it's now paid off. But when you saw the pages on the financial pages on the development charges reserve, you saw for many years that there was a minus under the library, and now it's paid off. So we've done that and worked out quite well. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just Director Coleman, just a couple more questions for you in regards to the timing of the grant. From your presentation, it sounded like you weren't expecting, or the staff weren't expecting, the grant to be so soon. And you've made mention that it's been a rush to get things ready in time, people working extra hours. What happens if we don't apply now and wait for the next grant? Maybe it's more, maybe it's less. What is the plan? And secondary to that question is, what was the plan before this grant came to fruition?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, if we don't apply now, they've said that there might be another intake in 2021, but there is no guarantee that that will happen. Governments can change their mind at any time about something like that. So if we don't apply now, it may be many years until we get a similar opportunity. What was Plan B? We've identified from the start that we needed a major grant from another level of government. So we always knew this wouldn't happen unless that grant came forward, and this is our best opportunity.
And further, if I may, Madam Mayor, through you, if we apply for this grant and we don't receive it, what is the plan then? If this is, understanding that we need a grant for this to go ahead, and not that this is a for sure thing, but if this doesn't happen, are there other identified grants that we'd be applying for, and what are the timelines on those?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, we are not aware of any other grant opportunities at this time unless that next stream at 2021 comes forward. So if we're not successful in getting this grant, then this project won't proceed unless another opportunity comes forward.
Okay, and just a point of clarification then, we weren't expecting this grant to come forth at this time, but we were identified this grant was going to be the grant to go ahead with on the project. It was the timing that we weren't expected to be so soon, is that correct?
When the federal government and the provincial government announced the ICIP grant, there was always going to be a community stream. We knew that one was coming forward. We didn't know the timing of it, though.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment to what the discussions around the table. I think that having small community identification is extremely important, whether it's Blackstock, it's Nestleton, it's Epsom, or it's the island. It's very important to have those resources, and I think that the conversation is whether we can afford it, not that we can afford to actually have something in Blackstock, but it's what goes in there. And the question I've been facing and struggling with is that if we're offered a 73% grant, that's great, but can we still afford the other 26% that's required to go ahead, whether it's a debenture or we're borrowing from the future to go ahead? Can we actually afford that, knowing that we have other obligations that we're looking at? We just had the roads deficit come back, which was a bit of a shocker to everybody as far as how much had gone up, even though we're throwing money at it. So the question is, can we afford it? Not can we afford to have Blackstock have its own identity, but what does that involve? Does it involve this large, I'd say kind of the shopping list of what's available is there, without having a business plan in front of us to say, yes, this is it. This is, we've identified operating costs would have to go up and everything else. The question would come back is, can we afford it, even with the 73% grant? Someone gives you a good deal, that's great, but can you still afford it at the end of the day? And that's what I'm struggling with. And without a business case or the actual more of a design than what we've had at the actual at the public consultation, I have a difficulty going ahead with approving this if we don't know what the end result is. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and Councillor Ross may have just taken what I was gonna say anyways, and it has nothing to do with myself not acknowledging the historical significance of that. And if you take the emotional aspect out of that and just look at what Councillor Ross said, can we afford this after the grant's done? It has nothing to do with whether or not we can afford to do the grant. It's, can we afford to run it after? Can we afford to staff it? Can we afford to put equipment in there? Can we afford that? When we have debates around this council floor, whether we can afford to put a crossing guard in or not, and now we're talking about increasing staff at a very significant level compared to what we have there now. That's my question. If staff could say to me, this won't cost us a penny difference in operating, then absolutely, I would have no problem supporting increasing this facility, because it is an opportunity that we don't know if it'll come back or not. But outside of the significance, and that has nothing to do with it, I value that, it has to do with whether or not we can afford to put bodies in the offices there and to maintain it. And that's where I'm significantly struggling with. Had we been able to see an operating plan, then maybe I'd be able to say, okay, yeah, we can justify the cost of this with our increased staff levels. Unfortunately, with time, we don't have that, so it's difficult for me to support something that we don't know what it's gonna look like. And just to Councillor Watton's point, the reason you were likely able to watch your little grandson play is because North Durham is now Uxbridge and Scugog, so that's why we travel from community to community. So it's the same user group basically using Port Perry and Uxbridge Ice. I was more questioning, are we building a big facility so that people from Kawartha Lakes can now start up a league here, where I'd feel more comfortable if it was our own users saying, I want a big ice pad in Blackstock, then that would make sense to me. But no, this has nothing to do with the emotional aspect of that. It has to do with the financial of, can we afford it? Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Brown?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, just procedurally then, if we get this grant, we have till 2027 to use the money? Okay, is there the possibility that we review this at some point after the grant is accepted, let's say, for example, and we decide not to go ahead? Is that an option for us? Or does that make us look ridiculous if we're asking for money that we're not going to use?
Through you, Madam Mayor, the Councillor, I would suggest that we revise what we build and make sure it's affordable. If the operation plan comes out and for some reason says it's more than we want to spend. My preliminary review of the numbers I was working on the weekend, I believe it is quite affordable with the operating plan that we're seeing. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but we can turn down a grant, but I don't think we would ever want to do that. I think we'd want to just amend the scope rather than turn it down.
And it's through you, Madam Mayor, so we have the opportunity to do that presently still. Like, we've got November 12th, it has to be in by November the 12th, that we can supply enough information that we're good.
It's so preliminary that I'm not comfortable sharing it at this point, but we will be bringing a full report forward in the new year with showing you what the building will look like, showing you what the operating costs will be. And at that time, any changes want to be made, we can make changes to make sure everyone's comfortable with it.
And just one more then, when is the grant expected to be announced?
They say spring or summer 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I've no further questions. I've got a couple myself. So the grant application is okay without a business case. They're not expecting a business case. Is that correct?
I misspoke before. There is a section called business case. I think it's more of a high-level business case, not a really detailed one, but showing why it's needed and the background, how we got to here.
And people who, or teams or whoever that want to use the facility from outside of the township, do they pay a different rate than local teams or local users? No, okay. Would it be fair to say that adult hockey would be used more at the new facility in the eastern part of our township if the ice size, if the size of the arena was bigger?
I anticipate if we had a larger arena, there would be more adult usage, yes.
Is there a lot of adult users now in
Yes, we're finding right now that the Scugog Recreation Complex pad, we're at around 95% for prime time usage. So we are turning away many private adult groups that are looking for ice time because they don't want to play at 11 o'clock at night. So we're looking at that would be a benefit we could.
So there's time available and there's a demand?
That's
Do
our
you
mock
turn them
strategy is
down?
that many of them would have an opportunity to play
Okay,
in
so we're
Blackstock.
turning them down now?
We are right now.
Okay, thank you. If we do not, or if we're not successful, and that I know the question was asked, it's my feeling that we would probably just shelve the design and then look for other opportunities. But has there ever been 73, is it 73.33%? Have we? I've never experienced grants that high. Is that?
To you, Madam Chair, yes, that is a high percentage, almost 3/4 cent on the dollar, $0.75, I mean. I'm more familiar with the 50/50. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Or 1/3, 1/3.
And I guess my last question, I think that was answered. If things don't turn out the way we want, we could, I guess, quite possibly, although I wouldn't suggest it either, we could turn down the grant and say, no, we can't afford it. Is that fair to say? I know we probably don't want to do that, but is that feasible?
That's correct. Up until the time that we sign an agreement, yeah, there's no commitment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question to you, Director. If the facility is built, and to Councillor Guido and Councillor Ross's concerns about the operating costs and feasible financial aspects of it, would that not fall into play as how we marketing our programs, what we put out there, who's using it, and so on and so forth? Like, I mean, it's kind of, is it a bit like a chicken and an egg, or an egg and the chicken? I don't know. Like, I mean, we would have an operating plan, but I would anticipate that, through that operating plan, we would need to have X amount of rentals at X amount of dollars to pay for our staffing and the expenses that occur, which, if I'm correct, we have that for the Scugog Recreation Complex at this point, do we?
through you, Madam Mayor, to the Councillor, what we have mostly is our operating budget plan, which is a line by line of what we expect revenues for different things and what the costs are for those same things. So we have similar.
So just further to that though, then we can't look at the staffing complement and what it's being used for now, given the size, given the costs. I mean, the number of times of breakdown, the loss of heat through the faulty roof, the deteriorating roof and so on and so forth. Like, those expenses come into play for sure with the facility we have. But I would presume that if we do the energy efficiencies and so on and so forth and all those things, all of that will come into play in our operating plan. Is that not correct?
Through your Madam Mayor, to Councillor, absolutely. We're looking at, we're not comparing it a lot to the costs at Blackstock right now because it's a very unique building. We're comparing it to the Scugog Recreation Complex. We're also comparing it to other arenas, and yeah, we're taking into account the energy efficiency features we're putting into the arena. So there's a lot of things to consider in the plan.
Anything further, Councillor Guido?
Thank you for allowing me to speak 3 times. I'll speak really fast then. What's the cost recovery rate right now on SCRC then?
It's 63%.
And we attempt to supplement that with user fees, correct?
That includes the user fees.
So we, in addition to an ice time, we also charge an additional user fee in an attempt to try to put money back into the facility to keep it running.
Are you talking about the surcharge?
Surcharge,
fee?
sorry, surcharge, yes.
Right. That includes the surcharge fees, yes.
Right, but right now, we're at 63% cost recovery to run that arena or facility. And now we're proposing to do another facility, which would likely maybe be at the same cost recovery rate.
We're attempting to get both of the rates up to about a 70%, so
How would we do that? By increasing the surcharge?
user fees.
User fees. So for all the letters of support people may be receiving for this, we'll start to receive letters of complaints about user charges and surcharges and everything going up to now support. And that's just what I wanted to highlight, that right now we're not full cost recovery there, so we're going to get into the same situation where we won't be full cost recovery there, which comes back to my main thing is I know you say it may be minimal, but I don't see how we can afford to run it the same way we're running it that way then. Would we duplicate the manager? That's what I would like to have seen as far as how we would staff it. Do we need a manager of recreation there? Do we, all that stuff. Anyways, thank you, Madam Mayor, for indulging me in my 3rd time. As far as ice availability, I only speak to the organization that my child plays in, but they're returning ice or not using ice many hours of the week in the Port Perry facility. So whether it's ice availability or not, there is ice available during prime time.
Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I lost count. I think it's only 2 for me. Is this expected to make money? Are we expecting the arena to make money? Is that the idea?
Through your Madam Mayor, the Councillor, no. Arenas do not make money. There is some carrying cost for the municipality.
Thank you.
And to that point, I think it's the same of many things that we provide in this community. It's a service. The library doesn't make money either. Certainly our roads don't make any money. But anything that we provide, the Bird's Eye Pool doesn't make money. It's a service we provide to our community, and that we're not in the business of making money. We're in the business of making this a great place to live, work, play, and raise your kids. Okay, Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So essentially, to summarize, I don't think that anyone in the township of Scugog are wanting council to make decisions based on emotion. Certainly, there's emotions involved for all of us because we love living here. But by the same token, given all the parameters and everything that we've heard today, would it be fair to summarize what has been said, is that we have an opportunity to apply for an unprecedented grant of 73%, which hasn't been characteristic. While because of the due diligence, we are prepared enough that we actually have the components we need to apply for this grant. But by the same token, the finalized decisions with respect to what components the building will have, what the end cost will be, and then what the operational cost will be, we still, at this council level, have the opportunity to make decisions to curtail, like to kind of rein it in if need be, in which case the grant would then, the grant amount, if we got the full ask, would potentially be reduced by that percentage. Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, that's a very good summary.
Okay, so by that token then, it would be fiscally responsible of us to take the opportunity to apply for a grant that we currently have already endorsed from future decisions, previous decisions of council that we've made, to take the good work, the design work, the public consultation, everything we've done to at least make this grant application, and then from there to remedy what the operating looks like and what the big picture looks like to decide what scope would make financial feasibility. Is that a fair statement? Maybe that's not even a question or a statement. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. I'm processing too. Thank you.
Okay, I would look for a motion that the presentation by Carol Coleman, Director of Public Works, Parks and Recreation, Blackstock Recreation Complex Update and Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, enabling bylaw be received. We're just voting on the presentation. Okay? Moved by Councillor Watton, Councillor McDougall seconded. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Now to the report, and we have to be diligent of the time, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. Councillor Guido?
It is going to be very short and very sweet. Thank you, Councillor Kiesebrink, for putting into perspective that. I just want to get the assurance that should we proceed and we determine we cannot afford it once a proper operating plan is provided to us, that we won't look like, well, the word in my head isn't the word that should come out, but we won't be too far down the road that we will look unprofessional. Okay, yes, that wasn't the word, but yes, unprofessional if we then say, no, we're not proceeding, because I don't want it to be that we're so far down that road that then we look like idiots if we say, okay, no, hang on, woo, we're done. We actually don't want to proceed. That's where I'm hesitating. So if someone can assure me here that us submitting the grant and later on you're providing us with the operating plan and we are able to scale down significantly if required without, with support, I guess is what I'm asking.
Director Coleman?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I personally believe that this is the right direction for the township. It's what every council decision on this matter has led us to at this point. I do believe the township will be able to afford it going forward when we bring all the details of the operating plan forward.
Well, I look forward to seeing that, Director Coleman, and can I just have assurance that it will not be frowned upon by staff, by whomever, if the council of the day, when we do receive that operating report, decides it is not feasible for us?
So in other words, we could take out some components or whatever to the level which we can afford? Would that be fair? Okay. Director Valentin?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just like to stipulate that this is a very good funding opportunity for us, and we would look to every mechanism that is possible to ensure that the operating costs are as small as possible, to ensure that we could get such a great facility in this municipality.
And if need be, we can scale back, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Councillor Watton, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And to Councillor Guido's comments, I would expect and I would certainly hope that should it be way beyond our capabilities and so on, that we would do our due diligence, as sad as it would make me, that we would have to turn it down or scale it back or do whatever. I would expect that of this council.
Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm in agreement too. If we have fewer components, the amount of money that we're receiving in the grant is less also then, because it's only 73.33%. Okay, just wanted to make that clear.
Okay. Councillor Keys-Brink?
And again, just a question, I'm not sure who to address it to. Would it be customary for, when an application comes forward, to give like a percentage of the ask? So if we make a full ask that's very robust, that has all the components that the application infrastructure fund is looking for, is it customary to give a percentage of something, or would it either be an all or nothing scenario? Just out of curiosity.
Director Coleman, if you scaled back before, is that what you're saying?
Apologize if my question wasn't clear. My question is, the infrastructure fund entity that will be looking at the applications that are submitted from various municipalities, is the practice to either give a full ask of a particular project or nothing? Or is there any precedent where they would give, say, a percentage of what's asked for, in which case we would be forced to scale it back? I just wanted to know how that works.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, that's possible. It's up to 73.33%. They could decide at the end of the day that it's 50% or some other different number. That's the maximum grant.
Further, through you, Madam Mayor, so the bottom line is this whole process is a bit of a moving target, because we're going to submit an application that kind of is in keeping with what they're looking for. But by the same token, once we learn that ultimate information of what's provided, we then will have to be prepared to be fiscally responsible and pull this back together to what that would look like.
That's correct through you, Madam Mayor. That's correct. And just further, Council has approved the preliminary design and consultation process, which, as you know, we've retained Barry Bryan Associates for that purpose. That's been approved, and as we mentioned, we'll be back to Council in the new year with more details on all of this. The design that's in the capital budget to proceed actually with designing the complex, irrespective of course, we were suggesting that be approved for 2020. However, we would not commence that design until we knew that the grant was approved and Council had agreed to proceed. Again, I'm just hoping that, I just know from dealing with the application to date that publicly, how this is communicated publicly, and how the province and the federal government perceive the desire for this facility in the township will have a major, I believe anyways, that'll have a major bearing on the allocation of grants. And we're either in favor of moving forward with this grant application at this time, I'm hoping wholly, or not. And I agree, I think it is a wonderful opportunity. I don't ever recall in my career almost a 75% grant being offered for facilities like this. As I mentioned, 50-50, one-third. It's an amazing opportunity when you see the funds. And no one is going, staff are not going to recommend a facility that's not sustainable from an operation perspective. We wouldn't. Done our preliminary homework and feel that it's supportable. But as you mentioned, there'll be other opportunities for Council to provide further input in that regard. Also, on the cost of the project, capital costs, option 2 shows that there's over $5 million being collected through development charges that are intended for this facility. That's why they're being collected, and they can't be used for any other purpose. So we have, with a little bit of fundraising and those development charges and the 73% grant, we have enough money to pay for this facility. The other piece I just want to give Council some assurance of is, as you know, we've been collecting funds to put towards the reserve for major facilities. And when we go through the capital budget today, the treasurer can point out what's been collected to date, and then what's collected on an annual basis, which is compounded annually. So if you take those funds that are being built into the operating budget now to save for this facility, and you translate those funds to help pay for the operating costs, that will go a long way to addressing our operational needs, that and the increased revenue. So understand the discussions to date, but wanted to provide that context. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
With respect to the percentage that we may get, I know it's up to 73.33 or whatever it is percent, but just so that you're aware, in our submission, we've been able to kind of tick off all of the boxes for the requirements, which puts us in a very good position to get the full percentage grant. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as per my previous comments, I still believe that's true, is that the underlying question is, can we afford it? But to your credit, Councillor Kiesebrink, you should be a politician. Oh, wait a minute. I think it's important to understand that it's an evolving process. And if we lock ourselves in, which is my concern, without a plan in front of us, you wouldn't get my vote. But if it's an evolving process where you do miss 100% of the chances you don't take, if we receive the grant, whether it's 73 or it was just stated that it could be less, then we need to make sure that there's an out. There's an exit strategy, and whether it's a single field house or it's this grand scheme that we have in front of us now, if we only receive a little bit or we receive a lot, or at the end of the day, there has to be that assurance that we can pull shoot and walk away from this at the end of the day, with our heads held high. So thank you.
Anything further? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to sit here that COMS 2019-042 Blackstock Recreation Complex Update and ICIP Enabling Bylaw be received, and that the bylaw appended as Attachment 1 to authorize and support the submission of a grant application under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, Community, Culture and Recreation 2019 intake for the Blackstock Recreation Complex Arena Replacement and Facility Expansion be approved and adopted. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Kiesebrink, Councillor Brown. Question?
Sorry, point of clarification. Have we received and moved comms 2019-42?
Isn't that the report that's what we're dealing with?
Oh,
now?
sorry, thank you.
Part of the agenda today. Okay? Any other questions? All those in favor? Thank you very much. And now we can break. Sorry, bylaw. Oh yeah, bylaw. Bylaw. I need a mover, please, that bylaw number 72-19 be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 4th day of November 2019. And the mayor and clerk are hereby directed to sign same and affix the corporate seal thereto. Councillor Watton. Councillor Brown. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Confirming bylaw. Mover, please. The confirming bylaw. Councillor Ross. Councillor Watton. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. That Ms. Mover, please, for this meeting to adjourn. Councillor Guido. Councillor McDougall. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We will reconvene in 5 minutes or so for the in-camera